Let's talk about the southern border. As Election Day draws near, Donald Trump and the Republicans are ratcheting up their rhetoric about the southern border, building a case on hyperbole, made up numbers, and playing on the ignorance of their voters in regards to the immigration system. Much of this talk is in extreme positions of whether the border is open or closed. These terms are meaningless as the border is not now and has never been either. The difference is relative, not absolute. No one has been for completely closed borders or completely open borders. It is an issue of how open borders are, existing laws, and how those laws are enforced. This is the first video in a series discussing the immigration crisis facing our nation. In this video, I will go over the actual numbers and their real significance compared to the rest of the world. In the second, I will discuss immigration, asylum, and refugee policies. In the third, I will look for things we can do to help solve some of these problems. While it's complicated, in broad terms, there are three types of immigrants. Documented, a foreign-born person who has legally entered the United States and has valid immigration documentation. Undocumented, a foreign person who is not a U.S. citizen or legal resident and who does not have valid immigration documentation. Paroled, an otherwise undocumented immigrant who is granted temporary status to stay for humanitarian reasons. The numbers. Now let's consider how many each of these types there are. Overall, there are 45.3 million immigrants of all types living in America. Of those, about 12 million are undocumented, with around 3 million being paroled. During the Biden administration, there have been about 2.5 million migrants admitted and paroled, with another estimated 1.6 million so-called gotaways who crossed without detection. However, it's not strictly cumulative, as some people return to their country and gotaways can be encountered later. Best estimates suggest that there are about 1 to 1.5 million more undocumented immigrants now than when Biden took office, with most of those being paroled asylum seekers. How Republicans are using numbers to lie. So where are the numbers like 20 million coming from? Well, they are just completely made up. There are numbers which are around 10 million, however, which aren't made up but are dishonest. Under Biden's administration, there have been 8.5 million encounters at the southern border. Republicans are using this to suggest that there are 8.5 million undocumented migrants in America. If you add that to the gotaway estimate, it goes over 10 million. There are two major problems with this. First, not every encounter equals a person who has been released into the country. Far from it. About 6 million of those were returned, repatriated, or denied entrance. Second, 8.5 million encounters does not mean 8.5 distinct people, as many of them are repeat encounters. Trump initiated Title 42 as a response to COVID, which essentially shut down the border for emergency reasons. Under Title 42, a migrant without documents who is denied entrance has the option of turning around and going back with no record of them trying to cross. This affords them the opportunity to try again, but it can create some math issues. To illustrate, this is Jose. Jose crosses the border and is denied entrance under Title 42. So he goes back and tries again the next day, and the next. He tries 10 times and is denied 10 times. So Jose accounts for 10 encounters, but he is in America 0 times. The Republican way of looking at this would have Jose here 10 times. There's also this lie that there are unvetted criminals being freely admitted. However, every person who enters is vetted, and very few of them are criminals. In fact, those 8.5 million encounters account for fewer than 10,000 violent crimes based on the Border Patrol's own statistics, and those were refused entry. So, is there a crisis? There is a crisis, but it's not so much a border crisis as it is a humanitarian crisis. Again, we need perspective. In total, we have about 1 million refugees or asylees, and an additional 3 million asylum seekers living in the United States. This seems like a lot, but this is out of over 120 million refugees worldwide. Just 12 years ago, there were only 10.5 million. And in spite of being the wealthiest nation in the world, the US only offers sanctuary to 3.3% of all refugees. We don't have a border crisis. We have a worldwide humanitarian crisis that is manifest at our southern border. The real question we need to ask is, why are there so many refugees around the world? There are 3 primary reasons. Number 1, conflict. There are currently 6 conflicts globally, which have resulted in over 10,000 deaths. Overall, more than 170,000 have died in 2024 in 56 conflicts, meaning well over 1/4 of the world's nations are currently engaged in some sort of conflict. Persecution. There are various reasons people are being persecuted around the world, including things like politics, religion, gender, sexual orientation, being transgender, and not having the right gang affiliation. Climate change. An estimated 20 million people worldwide every year are displaced due to climate change, with 84% of all refugees being from nations which have been heavily impacted by climate change. To wit, the issues here are far bigger than our southern border or our politics, both in terms of people and geography. It is bigger than who the current president is and U.S. immigration policy, which I will discuss in the next video. At the heart of things, we need to ask ourselves as Americans, what kind of role do we want to take in this international humanitarian crisis? Do we want to help it, or do we want to provoke it?